Good afternoon. On today's stated agenda, today is the charter meeting. Typically at charter meetings, we don't usually vote on legislation, but there is a lot going on, so we are voting on a series of bill todays, which you'll hear about. The first are a couple of finance items. Introduction 1226, which will establish the Throgs Neck Business Improvement District in Councilmember Jonai's district in the Bronx. And Introduction 1227, which will expand the Hudson Square Business Improvement District in my district. Moving on, the council will vote on the following legislation. Introduction 1299, sponsored by Councilmember Jumaane Williams, will clarify that for the purposes of enforcing prohibitions against unauthorized commuter van services, the definitions of for-hire vehicle and commuter van do not include public bus service operating pursuant to a contract with any state or local government. This has been a big issue in the outer boroughs related to people getting to and from airports. It's been around for a while. Next, we're going to vote on Introduction 828, sponsored by Councilmember Fernando Cabrera, which would require, this sounds a little geeky, but it's important, which would require the Department of Records and Information Services, DORIS, to list all of the reports required by local law on its website. So we pass all sorts of reporting bills all the time, but if the press or the public wanted to see what those reporting bills are, right now you can't really find them. So this would require DORIS to put those reports on their website, including relevant information about those reports. It will also provide the public with access to every past report of the type received by DORIS, and if an agency fails to submit a required report on time, which happens a lot, DORIS would request the report from the agency and post that request. Their request they would post on their website in lieu of that report until the agency transmits the report. So the public and the press would see that an agency didn't submit a report, but there would be the letter from DORIS saying, we made the request to the agency, and so everyone would know what has come in and what hasn't come in. Finally, this legislation would require that reports be sent to DORIS electronically rather than hard copy, which crazily in 2019 is not the case. This sounds geeky and wonky, but it's actually very important for the work we do every single day. Next, the council is going to vote on Introduction 728. This has been in the news a lot. It's sponsored by Councilman Rafael Espinal, which would establish a temporary program for the resolution of outstanding judgments resulting from awning sign violations. Again, you saw what was happening. Specifically, it was in South Brooklyn where a lot of this was happening, but all over the city. It will also establish a 2-year moratorium on the issuance of an additional awning sign violations, as well as an interagency task force to explore issues related to awning signs and education related to bringing existing awning signs into compliance. The bill will require the Department of Buildings to provide a report to the council containing information about awning sign violations and establish a waiver of work without a permit penalties issued in connection with the awning signs since December 28th, 2017 going forward. This was, of course, a great concern for business owners across the city, so I'm glad we're voting on this bill today. It's an example of us being responsive to community needs and giving a helping hand to small businesses that are the lifeblood of the city. Finally, and this is a really big deal, the package we're voting on, we're going to vote on the student transportation oversight package aimed at improving our city's school bus system. This has received a lot of attention, and rightly so. The Daily News did a lot of investigatory work on this. When parents put their children on a school bus, we are the guardians of that child, and we have to take that obligation seriously while we're taking care of them. This past fall, we had a lot of problems that caused a lot of stress to parents, and I'm sorry that that happened. This package is our attempt to help make sure that it doesn't happen again. The primary goal of the package is to keep our children safe, so I'm proud to, of course, support all of these bills. The first bill in this package is Introduction 89, sponsored by Councilmember Andy King. It would require the Department of Education report on the average length of time scheduled for school bus routes in each community school district. The bill would also require the Department of Education to share actual school bus transportation times as recorded by GPS trackers. Next is going to be an introduction by Councilmember Danny Drum, Introduction 451, the chair of our Finance Committee. It will require the Department of Education to distribute a school bus ridership guide in hard copy and electronically to all students and parents. This guide would include a description of eligibility for school bus services services, what the services entail, information for parents and students living in temporary housing. These are kids, many who are homeless, and students in foster care, and the responsibilities of students and parents using DOE school bus services. Next is Introduction 926, which I sponsored. It require the Department of Education to share with parents and post on its website how parents can file a complaint about a school bus employee, the process by which the department investigates such a complaint, and the possible results of such an investigation. This bill also requires the Department of Education to share the protocols for school bus services in inclement weather emergencies. And Introduction 929, sponsored by Councilmember Joe Borelli, would require the Department of Education to report on all of the calls and complaints received from parents and guardians about school bus services, the investigations DOE opened into school bus employees, the number of investigations that were substantiated, and a description of outcomes taken by the Department of Education in the event of a substantiated investigation. We're going to vote on two pieces of legislation sponsored by Councilmember Kalos. Introduction 1099, and this is a really big one, will require that every school bus in New York City has to be equipped with a GPS tracking device, and require the Department of Education to give authorized parents and guardians access to the real-time location of their child's school bus whenever it is in use. This bill would also require each bus be equipped with two-way communication devices for allowing communication with the school bus operator. And Introduction 1148 would require the Department of Education to report on school bus routes that are determined, goals for time limits for those bus routes, and any other goals related to school bus services. This bill would also require the Department of Education share school bus routes with parents and guardians at least 15 days before the start of the school year, and report a list of school bus vendors who completed a dry run of their route as required by the contract. Those bus vendors who are not in compliance with their contractual obligations to complete those dry runs. The bill will also require the Department of Education to let parents know on a daily basis if their child's bus is late arriving or departing school. These are two very important pieces of this package. And lastly, and I don't see him here, our great education chair, Mark Traeger, has Introduction 1173. It will require the Department of Education to report on the Department's school bus services, including the vendors providing school bus transportation to students, the number of vehicles and employees used by such vendors, the number of school bus routes and transportation sites in use, the number of students using school bus transportation, including the type of students and the categories of students who are eligible for DOE transportation services. This bill would require the Department of Education to report on school bus delays and no-shows. So if our chair of the Education Committee arrives, I'd be happy to have him speak. And Councilmember Espinal got here a couple minutes late, so I want to invite him up to speak on his important legislation on awnings.
Today marks the culmination of nearly 2 years of hard work and advocacy. I'm grateful to my fellow council members, Councilmember Brannan, Koo, Menchaca, Yeager, Holden, and Jonai, and the chair of the Housing Buildings Committee, Councilmember Cornegie, and the speaker for all their efforts in pushing this forward. So thank you. We began putting together this integral piece of legislation when businesses in my district about 2 years ago suddenly found themselves with $6,000 fines for signs that they had up in their businesses for years. Since November of 2017, there have been over 2,000 sign violations reported 311 across the 5 boroughs. The fine, combined with the price tag of a new sign, can be devastating to a business's bottom line. As the sudden uptick in violations came to the awareness of my colleagues, we quickly worked together to institute a 2-year moratorium on any sign violations. Businesses will not have to feel the burden of these unjust fines while we work on a comprehensive reform to end this unjust practice. In addition to this moratorium, any small business that has yet to pay these fines will be given complete financial relief. There will be reduced permit fees for hanging new signs, and a task force with small business owners, city agencies, and the chambers of commerce to investigate any predatory practices that might be going on and compile strategic reform to prevent this injustice from ever happening again. And again, the big problem here was that there were thousands of businesses across the city that were being fined on a daily basis for having these awning signs that they've had for decades. We did some investigation. There was one person involved in these 301 complaints, and we've learned that it was just for him to be able to do more business and be able to hang up more signs across the city. So what was happening was really egregious, and it's something we need to take action to make sure that our small mom and pops across the 5 boroughs have the resources they need to continue doing business in our city. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Congratulations. Important. That concludes the agenda for today's stated charter meeting, and I look forward to proceeding with today's votes. I'm happy to take first any on-topic questions on any of the bills we just discussed, and then we can do off-topic. Yes.
Are you surprised there hasn't been a package for the school buses any sooner? I mean, had it gotten, in your opinion, to a crisis level, really?
Well, I think Councilmember Kalo spoke about this very eloquently, the history of this, how long it's been around. These bills have been kicking around for a long time, some of them. But what we saw in the storm that occurred earlier this winter was a real crisis that happened across the city, but especially when you had children who were on buses, their parents did not know where they were. Some kids didn't get home until after midnight. They had been on buses for 12 hours. And so we're always looking to improve, but one of the basic things that any local government has to do is provide adequate transportation services for students. And that's why this bill is so important. Ben said it very well. We want to make sure we get kids to and from school safely, quickly, efficiently, and in a transparent manner for their families. And so I'm glad we're tackling this today. I think it's very important.
Are the bus companies required to pay for the GPS, or is that going to be kind of paid for with kind of in their contract by the city?
We started working on this in 2014 with the Office of People Transportation when, during a storm in 2014, a parent left their kid at the bus stop. The bus still wasn't showing up. They had to get to work. They got to work. The parents had a building service worker reach out to them. They took the day off work, went home to get their kids who never made it to school that day. The kids missed a day of school. Then they got sick, so they missed more school. So we've been working with the OPT. In 2017, there was a contract where the GPSs would have been required, and OPT said that they were moving forward with that contract. And then in 2018, when the buses didn't have the GPS on them, we said, what happened? They were like, whoops, that contract didn't move forward. So this would require that this be a part of it. Currently, there's 10,000 buses, approximately 10,000 buses. 6,000 of those buses have a technology on them called NavMan, and they're currently planning at, I believe, the city's expense to put on the additional 4,000 NavMans. And so my belief is that if that's what the city wants to do, we'll support as long as it gets done by September. That being said, I would just say you can buy a smartphone for like 10, 20, like maybe $50, and like it could be a lot cheaper, and Uber's done this, and like MTA's done this, and so we can use the NavMans, or we could just literally, and I've offered DOE this before, I will give them $20,000 from my pocket to put a phone in every single bus and then just put a GPS program on there. There's hundreds of them out there. I think they can get it done.
What's the cost if they go with the NavMan technology?
The cost from our fiscal impact is we estimate $3.7 million year one to get the GPSs installed on the 4,000 additional vehicles, and then a $1.8 million additional cost moving forward every year. And I think we can get these costs down and expect them to be far lower. But that being said, this is a small price to pay to make sure that parents actually know where their children are.
So it's going to be part of future contracts. Any other on-topic questions on any of these bills? Summer, yeah.
The Doris bill.
Yes.
What's the timeline on implementation? Is it going to be in real time, every day updated?
It's not going to be in real time. Jeff?
When the reports are coming out, it's going to have a calendar of when reports are due. And when a report when it is received, it will be put up in real time. When it is past due, a letter will be sent to the agency to say this report is past due, and a copy of that letter will be posted in place of the report as a placeholder, so that the public will know that a request has been made for that.
Any penalties for non-compliance?
No. I think it's going to be embarrassing for them if you see a letter up there that says that the agency's out of compliance. But I'm glad that to start the new year, you asked this question, because I expected you to ask this question about Doris. So thank you.
Well, you did say it was nerdy.
Yes. Gotham Gazette. It's great. Courtney agrees. She used to work there. Okay, anything else on topic? Okay, off topic. Yes, yeah.
I have a question
Yep.
about the reports or about the school bus transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Will all the reports, in English, or will be other language like Chinese?
The reports that we compile, I think our reports are typically in English, but if folks need help translating, we have translation services where we could help with that. But our reports are in English, and in the past, if people need help with translation, we always want to make sure that happens. The transportation survey that we're doing right now across the city, we're offering the survey, I think, in 7 languages. So again, if it's an issue for folks or for parents, we want accessibility, we want transparency, we want it to be usable.
On the school bus riders guidelines, it's going to be in English and 6 other languages as well. So when it goes out to parents, it'll be in those languages.
The handbook.
Including Chinese?
Yes.
Yes.
The mayor just announced his plan to propose paid personal leave up to 10 days for all workers in the city.
Yep.
And he feels that it can be passed by the council within the next few months. What is your response to, and then secondly, your reaction to yesterday's announcement regarding guaranteed health care for everyone?
Well, on the paid leave that the mayor just announced in the rotunda here at City Hall, I mean, I support paid personal time for workers in New York City, and I look forward to reviewing the mayor's proposal as it makes its way through the legislative process. There's no commitment on any details yet. We want to hear from all the stakeholders. We want to hear from workers and small business owners. The council itself has a very generous paid personal time policy that is actually beyond what the mayor's policy that he's proposing today. Councilmember Williams introduced this bill last session, so there was already a council bill that existed. So I'm happy to see that the mayor supports this conceptually. I support it, but it will go through the legislative process. On the health care that was announced yesterday, I believe health care is a human right. I want everyone to have access to comprehensive, culturally sensitive, high quality health care. I think if we can get more health care to folks, that's a good thing. The council's also been looking at this ourselves before the mayor's announcement, and we have some other ideas that we think could potentially complement what the mayor announced yesterday. But again, that will go through the budget process because it's a $100 million outlay in funds towards the Health and Hospitals Corporation. And so again, in concept, I support it. I think it's a good thing, but the details on both these things matter, and they will both go through the processes that are important here at the council, both through legislative and budget processes.
There's also some indication from people who are looking at this that the amount is grossly underestimated and that it will actually cost much more. Could you address that? Do you have concerns along those lines?
We'll figure that out when it goes through the process. I mean, no details have been shared with me besides getting a heads up before the mayor made the announcement yesterday. But no one shared with me any documents, any information, so I can't address that. But we, for the last 6 months or so, the council itself internally has been looking at what San Francisco did for Healthy San Francisco under Mitch Katz, who's now the head of H&H here in New York, what he did almost a decade ago to expand healthcare access, how they got it done. Some of the ways they got it done was people thought were going to be controversial. They added some different fees, employer fees, to be able to cover some of the costs associated. The mayor's plan that he announced yesterday, just from what I know on the top lines, doesn't do that. It puts more city tax levy money into health and hospitals to provide more primary care services and support for folks who are either undocumented or don't have health insurance through a typical framework of getting health insurance. And so we're going to look at all those details, and we may have a similar or complementary proposal that we think similarly could do good things. Yoav.
Just on the Jumani bill, has that been reintroduced in this session, or?
Was it? Yes, it was reintroduced.
It was.
Yep.
And on yesterday's announcement, do you think it was kind of advertised accurately, I guess I would say? Doesn't it essentially just trying to get more people to sign up for Metro Plus, and on the kind of uninsured side, get people, rather than going to emergency care, tries to get them into preventative and primary care? I guess, is that kind of go as far as it was kind of presented?
Well, I think I saw the mayor's press secretary say yesterday that this is not single payer, this is not universal health care coverage. The only folks that could really do that are the federal government, and I don't see that happening with President Trump and a Republican Senate or the state legislature and governor. Past, I have supported, and I still support, the two chairs of the health committees respectively, Gustavo Rivera in the Senate and Dick Gottfried in the Assembly, the New York Health Act, which would create single payer. There's a conversation around the budget, details around that, how much it would cost, how you would implement it, municipal welfare funds related to healthcare, all of those things, and we have to have that conversation. I think they said yesterday this is not that, so that's an important distinction. One of the things you run up against here is the Affordable Care Act doesn't allow for any type of health insurance product for anyone who's undocumented. So you can't craft a policy if the federal government doesn't allow it. But we have some ideas on how to potentially further expand access beyond what was announced yesterday, and I look forward to sharing those details in the future.
Just one follow-up. Does it trouble you at all how readily the mayor came up with $100 million toward that program, given how resistant he was to the fair fares?
Fair fares had to go through the budget process that was negotiated. This will go through a budget process that's negotiated.
H&H still has out here budget gaps, sort of growing, and now the mayor seems to be adding more funding. Do you think, is that an issue that's been resolved, needs to be resolved first before this program comes up?
I mean, we don't have enough time to actually discuss the complications and the nuances and the realities that H&H has had to face over the last 6 or 7 years. One of the things that they put in their plan initially that Dr. Katz's predecessor, Ram Raju, put forward was to increase enrollment on Metro Plus to get more people enrolled, which would be a very ready and consistent revenue stream for H&H. So this in some ways helps get that done if they can get more people to sign up in Metro Health Plus. There have been significant changes. They've been renegotiating contracts. They've been trying to cut down on waste. They've been looking at the contracting process as it relates to other than personnel services. They've been doing a lot of things. They got rid of a lot of managerial non-union positions, which saved a lot of money. And so this is going to be an ongoing process. I care deeply about the public hospital system. It is the final shreds of a safety net for many New Yorkers, especially undocumented New Yorkers and people that don't have health insurance. So I, of course, support ensuring that H&H has the money that it needs, but also we have to keep having the conversation about their transformation plan and how we get them in a stable place. But I think Dr. Katz is doing a good job. Danny, did you want to say anything on H&H?
No, just to add $100 million price tag on this is definitely
Finance
something
chair.
that has to go through the budget process and through the finance committee as well. So as we move through that, we look forward to seeing how the mayor can make that happen, and we'll go through that process.
Yes.
So Mark Logan's is introducing a sugar bill today that's going to put a sugar warning on menus across the city at chain restaurants. Previously, the portion cap was a big issue that obviously the Board of Health was struck down on. And when you were chair, you were pretty tough on the previous speaker in regards to the portion cap. Now, for
The previous health commissioner. The previous speaker?
I thought you were tough on the speaker for not going further with the portion cap, being for the city council.
I don't remember saying that.
I was curious
Okay.
if you were planning for 2019 moving forward with any sort of portion cap legislation or being tougher on sugar.
I have supported not the exact portion cap proposal that Mayor Bloomberg and his Board of Health put forward, which was struck down because it had to go through the legislative process. I think we need to ensure that people have access to healthier foods and hopefully not give children soda and sugary beverages. Councilmember Kalos just passed a Happy Meal bill recently, and so anything.
It's pending here.
Pending hearing. So anything we can do on this, I think, is great. It will go through the legislative process. So I have to have
On that bill as well, it's been over a year, right?
The Speaker Johnson, so when we did the Healthy Happy Meals, he was health chair, he got a hearing for the bill. We faced substantial pushback from a number of national organizations. What I'm really grateful to Corey Johnson for is that he actually reached out to the American Beverage Association and actually secured their vital support for the Healthy Happy Meals legislation. And so we're focusing on the beverages. And so that legislation, we're trying to get the hearing on. I'll be very honest. We were looking to do it, I believe, in October, and then we had a Legionnaires situation, and so we did the Legionnaires hearing. Then we've been talking about it frequently, and I believe we'll be moving forward.
I support Ben's bill. Courtney.
Just to follow up to that, though, so you said the sugar bill will be going through the legislative process. So do you support it, though, considering you've supported similar proposals in the past?
I don't know the details of this bill. This is the first it's kind of been raised to me in a while. But traditionally, I have supported measures along these lines. And again, I think that we need to do things to disincentivize unhealthy choices. And so I think the mayor supported the portion cap when he ran for mayor in 2013. As health chair, as Amanda said, I was pretty vocal in my support of doing something along these lines. I haven't looked at the most recent iteration of the bill, and I look forward to doing that and working with our health chair, Mark Levine, on that.
And then on another topic, the MTA, can you just expand a little bit on what your own plan for the city subway system is going to look like? I mean, I've read that in 2 months you plan to come out with your own plan on how it should be run. So what could that plan look like? What are you expecting? I mean, I know you can't say what you're going to propose 2 months from now, but as much detail, I guess, as you can.
Well, I don't control the subways and buses, but I think that the city should control the subways and buses. So I think we should have municipal control. I've been out, yesterday I was at the 77th Street R train stop in Bay Ridge. The day before I was in Jackson Heights with Danny Drum, giving surveys out to folks to ask them about their experience on a daily basis on what it's like to take the subway. And we are compiling those. We've gotten a really good response just in 2 days. Today I'm going to be on Staten Island at the ferry terminal, asking folks about what their experience is, whether it's on the rail on Staten Island or when they come into the city, what their experience is like. So we're going to compile that information, analyze it, share it with the MTA, and it will inform our proposals moving forward as well. On the fine details of municipal control, this is a conversation that people have raised in the past before. It's one that I think needs to be elevated, and I'm going to keep banging that drum. The exact details on how to get this done, it's complicated. It's not easy, and so I'm going to put forward a comprehensive, detail-oriented plan on how to do that. But for the next 45 days or so, as acting public advocate and as speaker, I want to keep shining the light on issues that are important to New Yorkers, advocating on those issues. And I think municipal control of the subways is one of those areas to really look at. Governor Cuomo said yesterday to the Daily News editorial board that he wants to blow the MTA up and really look at the governance of the MTA and how it's structured. I think one way to do that is to give control of New York City Transit and the tunnels and the bridges back to New York City, break out Long Island Railroad and Metro North, but the exact funding mechanisms and all of the details on how to get that done in a way that would work is something that I will release in the next 60 days. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.